This edition of Dreamland suffers from deteriorated sound quality. We're very sorry for this inconvenience. Unfortunately, we were unable to correct it. What if it was possible to go back in time and see the past as it really was, to walk in the streets of yesterday, to perhaps meet your own grandfather? What if it was possible to go into the future and to find out what really matters now, then come back and change your life accordingly? The magic of seeing the stock market reports of 2 years hence, you'd be rich. Are there such people? Could it be real? Well, of course, we think not. But let's talk today to David Lewis Anderson of the Anderson Institute. David Anderson knows at least as much about time and time travel as anyone else around. Welcome to the show, David.
Whitley, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here on Unknown Country.
Well, thank you. David, let's talk a little bit first about whether or not time travel is even possible. Could you tell us, well, for example, I've read for years that physicists were saying it's not, and yet that seems to have changed.
Well, my short answer to that, Whitley, is absolutely yes. As a matter of fact, I think it's an old question. It's not just about what I might speak about today with regards to our research and work at the Anderson Institute. I've personally witnessed the activities at different levels of time-controlled technology and application in Japan, in India, in China, in South Korea, and at 2 different locations in the Americas. So I can say for a fact that absolutely yes, time control technology is here. It exists on different levels and scales, but it is here today. So it's not a question of if it is possible. It certainly is. The question is of how and when will be applied and for what type of uses.
Well, of course, what you've said is incredibly revolutionary. Time control technology. Let's talk a little bit about what that would be, or is. If you would describe it for us.
Certainly. Well, certainly, time control technologies, different technologies exist today that have been demonstrated in the lab and passed peer review, and some of the technologies have been demonstrated yet have been kept quite covert due to the influences of major special interest groups and governments. But there is the ability, well within the laws of our mathematics and physics, to be able to provide time control capabilities to the future and the past, whether it's to transmit matter forward or backwards in time, whether it's just information. Some techniques and some aspects of the laws within our mathematics and physics today are very feasible within the state of technology today. There are some that hold tremendous promise to greatly increase the capabilities and the range of applications in time control technology, but need a little more time to develop the supporting technologies required to make it happen. One of the greatest developments, Whitley, for yourself and your listeners in the recent years, really physicists in our community pretty much have always agreed that time travel is possible. Pretty much a lot of them didn't want to come out of the time travel closet, if you will. But pretty much almost every major physicist is coming out now talking about, as a matter of fact, that time travel absolutely is possible. It does not violate the laws of our mathematics and physics. You have physicists even as well known as Stephen Hawking, who now acknowledged and came out publicly stating that he believes in parallel universes and time travel. The real revelation that has happened is that we're finding new ways to accomplish this at a very relatively low input power, something that was quite difficult in previous years.
Yeah, because Stephen Hawking's comment was always that it was apparently possible. He changed his position in 1993, I believe, but that it probably wasn't practical. And this is what's so interesting, because you're saying basically that it is practical. It can be done.
Absolutely. We've seen government organizations like the NEC with funding through Princeton, and Dr. Yulian Wang's work, sending information backward in time faster than the speed of light. We've seen similar experiments in Russia and Japan. We've seen the application of time warp fields in many different forms. We've seen University of Connecticut. I know a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to Dr. Mallet today and what he's proposing using circulating light beams. And I know a lot of people may be surprised by it, but one of the reasons why I'm pleased to be on your show, it's not just to talk about the technology today. It's also it's inevitable, but it's also necessary to speak about the fact that a lot of these governments and special interest groups holding control of this technology do not want to make it visible. They do not want to make the public aware of it. It's a very, very difficult and complex situation, but the issue now, and one of the reasons we have come forward more publicly now, as you know, we pretty much, I'll say we went dark for the last 5 years while we were continuing with our work, but we've come forward now because it's no longer a question of if or what if the technology is available. We can send information forward and backward in time or send matter forward and backward in time. The capabilities exist there now, not just at the Anderson Institute. This isn't a promo or a commercial about the Anderson Institute. It's a message that I want to get out to people all around the world that this technology, as amazing as it is, could have catastrophic consequences for the people of this planet. It can also have amazing benefits, but we've come forward, and we're pleading with other agencies and organizations to come forward, and we hope they will in different countries around the world, because we have to talk about how the technology is used responsibly. And that's one of the reasons why you don't see it. But again, that's no different. Anytime we've seen a revolutionary technology develop before, typically the public is not made aware of it until about 15 or 20 years, 25 years sometimes afterward, when it's convenient for the governments and the special interest groups. But we have to understand really what the potential power, benefit, and financial implications are of a technology like this.
You say that it could have catastrophic consequences and also benefits. What are some of the consequences that you fear could arise?
Oh, wow. We could, some of the consequences. If the technology was displayed publicly, first off, and it's one of the things we're campaigning for and we'll probably talk about during the show, is that it must be quickly regulated. And the actual science behind it needs to be kept secret to avoid abuse. But some of the benefits of time control technology, with time control technology, we could answer some of the greatest questions about history. We could research and catalog, say, extinct species of plants and animals. We could, instead of guessing at what, say, the dinosaurs look like, we could actually observe them and see how they behaved. The way we look at those today, they're mostly theories. But with time travel, we know exactly how evolution occurred in different parts of history. Also, events in history that were disputed could be viewed, studied, and documented. Now, of course, there's tremendous consequences to that as well. Documentaries could actually begin containing the actual video of events that they're describing instead of just recreations. Even though the recreations might be more detailed and entertaining than the actual events, the truth would surface. Some of the greatest mysteries of the world could be surfaced, whether it be things like the original use of Stonehenge or maybe the purpose of the Great Pyramids, the exact location of Atlantis, which could be added to historical maps. And suddenly the skills needed to uncover history would dramatically change.
And what happened
but
here
there's also
12,600 years ago or thereabouts, when there was some sort of an enormous catastrophe, did it destroy a great civilization or not?
Exactly. But there's also that potential of, when we talk about this type of technology, it's so complex. Any scientific breakthrough that offers the type of commercial prospects and it attracts tremendous interest and investment from governments, from private enterprise, from all types of organizations and agencies around the world. And when you look at those organizations, this becomes very complex. The financial aspirations of these governments, as well as the aspirations and the power of large businesses and the political and economical ramifications are just significant. And the range of technological possibilities with regards to time control technologies are so enormous that the only limitations on what we might do with them are the results of our imagination, which frankly is insufficient. And when we look at time control technology now, the rate at which we're acquiring this puts us in a very critical position at this time. Absolutely critical. What we do in the next steps could determine not just all the wonderful ways we might use time control technologies, but we're talking about the possibility to re-engineer historical timelines and all the dramatic
that was a question I was just going to ask. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, if we look at it, the potential for damage is high. And what scares me the most as a scientist, this is why some of my peers don't always necessarily agree with me, and we have many conversations roundtable on this, but we're not ready for this unprecedented acquisition of technologies. If we examine the philosophical basis of our human ethics and history, we've always been able to correlate greater knowledge and power with a greater need for more responsibility to provide a foundation for applying technology wisely.
Yes.
But until recently, we could even say this works. We could also say it doesn't work. Look at things like nuclear power and nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. We can say it's worked. It's been highly effective. This planet's people and the human race have had a capacity for more reasoning that has developed and kept pace with the developments in human knowledge and technology and its capacities. But with this new area in time control, the gap between the science and the gap between moral reasoning has reached and passed a very, very critical point.
And
this is where the danger is.
Critical point. We've got to take a little break. We'll be right back, folks.
At last, the 2009 Dreamland Festival is available on DVD from the UnknownCountry.com store. Last summer's festival was an unforgettable experience with thrilling presentations from William Henry, Jim Mars, Linda Moulton Howe, and Ann Strieber, and of course, Whitley Strieber. Don't miss this extraordinary DVD. Get it today from the UnknownCountry.com store. And subscribers, look for a huge $10 off coupon in the UnknownCountry.com subscriber section. Go to UnknownCountry.com and click on the store tab right now. Get your copy today.
You're listening to Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. This is the edge of the world.
We're talking to David Anderson, his website, AndersonInstitute.com. David is involved in time travel. In fact, David, I think you probably are a time traveler. You even know something about that. I'll just lay it on the line. I know somebody who saw you in 1978 and then met you a few years ago and was shocked to see that it was the same person, unchanged. How do you explain that?
Well, actually, I think I know the individual you're speaking of.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
Can't say I've had similar situations like that. Perhaps the one with this individual was quite strong and powerful. It's difficult to explain. I also have to be honest, my background is as a physicist, as a scientist, so as much as I believe the study of time requires looking at the problem and the subject from many different perspectives, my best position is as a scientist. I do have many friends, though, who would say that many times these types of deja vu or visions are many times where we might briefly become in touch with a parallel universe. That would be their opinion. For myself,
yes.
I still tend to be quite mystified with these types of observations.
So it would seem possible, perhaps, that you do travel in time, but you just haven't started yet. Could that be it, or have you traveled in time?
That's a complicated question. We have been very active with many different types of experimentation, and we have done work with both matter and information forward and backwards in time. And some of these I do have what I want to say, a personal and professional obligation not to talk about. But with regards to myself, I would not say that I am a well-experienced time traveler. Why don't we just leave it at that?
But there are such people.
I think that if you statistically look at some of the evidence, I think a lot of people could make an argument. We always have people, and you always have groups that talk about the evidence of many types of distinguished and reputable people, whether it be kings, princess kings, government officials, lay people who have seen UFOs that are potentially time travelers from our future. There's a lot of theories out there. Again, Whitney, you catch me at a disadvantage because my strength is more in the area of science than in speculating about these things. But I think the most important thing is, a lot of people look at this subject and they try to categorize it and put it in a little box and put a label on it. And when we look at a subject like time, you can't look at it from one perspective. Time is something we don't understand. And generally as a people, as a human race, we don't understand the concept of time. And a lot of people want to put a physical label on it. A lot of people want to put a metaphysical label on it. Other people want to put a spiritual label on it. Other people want to call it as a moving arrow, an unchangeable
Newton's
force.
arrow, the arrow of time that goes only in one direction. False.
Yeah, exactly. And even within philosophy, there are four major views of time. We simply don't understand it. And if we really want to continue to advance our development in the scientific community, as well as learn better how to build the moral compass required for this civilization to manage this technology, we have to study it from many different aspects. And that's something we encourage in our Time Research Association is we even encourage our employees to become very well aware and well studied of many different aspects of time, not just from the aspect of mathematics and physics.
So
But it is.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, but I was saying that what I wanted to say is that the potential misuse of this technology is the potential for misuse and mismanagement is quite severe.
Well,
We're not talking about
it's
anymore.
horrifyingly severe. What if some Soviets got hold of it, some would-be communists, and went back and restitched the Cold War, or worse, Nazis, and restitched World War II? Or somebody who didn't like humanity went back and killed off our ancestors. Some ecologist, perhaps. I mean, yes, it's certainly dangerous. But let me ask you this. There's a Russian mathematician who you may know about, whose name escapes me, who wrote a paper that was influential in Hawking's change of his mind. It's been a long time since I read this paper. But essentially he was saying that the principle of least action would always make the grandfather paradox impossible. That is to say, you couldn't change things in your own past, and it would always somehow not work. And therefore, because of the mathematics of the situation, you could go into the past, but in a limited way, not with complete freedom. Are you familiar with this? And this is one of the things that convinced Hawking that it might be possible.
Yeah, basically, one of the fundamental philosophies that was projected, that nature will always keep its balance and
yes,
keep these paradoxes from happening. Personally, Whitney, for your listeners, what I would tell them is I completely disagree, and this is based upon observations we've made in the laboratory. And for the listeners, one of the things that is very difficult, extremely difficult, and I'll probably repeat it a couple times, we as human beings have a severe limitation. We do not see the reality of our physical universe, and this universe, if you want to go one step further, of information and energy, as it is. We see it as we are. the way we observe and the way we experience the three dimensions of space and the dimension of, we like to call it, of time, is in a large part due to our cultural and biological evolution. We as a human race, we don't understand time. We don't want to, a lot of times because it's linked to our own mortality, other times because people are too busy shrinking all the magic in the world in this universe to the size of their daily routines and mere material possessions. Yes. And other times just because if they can't, the function of the human mind, a lot of scientists will tell you, is to rationalize your observations that you perceive through your senses, which are limited in the real world, with what you believe in your mind. And with all those limitations, we do not see time and space the way it is. We see it the way we are. And for those of you who would disagree with that, listening to the show, look at some of the basic cultures. There are cultures in Africa, even in the Americas, that basically have no concept within their language for past, present, and future. Time doesn't exist for them. They never talk about the temporal quality of an event. They only talk about the quality of the event's occurrence. They never talk about things in terms of past, present, and futures. Entire cultures that exist on this planet today, in more limited numbers, as our thinking gets narrower and narrower through the generations, sometimes I feel, that's proof that time is a product of our own biological and cultural evolution and severely limited by our senses.
Well, I think you said a very profound and important thing just now, and folks, remember this. We don't see the world the way it is. We see it the way we are. That is a great key to the kind of mind opening that this website and this program are all about. So thank you for those very valuable words, David. David Anderson's website, by the way, is andersoninstitute.com. And David, can you tell us some of the ways people can get involved? In other words, what can they do on your website? What would you like somebody coming to your website for the first time to do?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is,
it's a beautiful website, folks, and it's very complex, so give him some time. He'll figure it out. What would you like us to do there?
Well, there's so many messages. The first is quickly and briefly look at the philosophy of time and understand through that reading how little we as a human race know about time. And then find what interests you and learn about it. On the website, we talk about time, the nature of time itself. We talk about the history of measuring time, definitions and standards. We talk about time in religion and philosophy and physics. We talk about time-controlled technology, some of the great legends of experiments in time, how we perceive time, culture in time, art in time. The website is dedicated. It's dedicated for sharing of information for free education, which is a very important part of our mission. What I'd encourage people to do is read and learn. Find something that interests you and read and learn. I'd also encourage you is that there's 3 options available to you to stay in touch with what's happening around the world. The first is the Time Research Association, and you'll find right on the homepage a link to join that. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We don't inundate or spam people with a lot of information, but we do monitor activity and what's happening around the world with regards to time control, and time travel, and we make it immediately available. We also offer what we call an online world encyclopedia of time, one of the largest collections of information on time control, and time travel in the world. Again, it's free and easy to use. And also we offer a lot of educational programs and packages available for free download via the site. So I'd encourage you to experiment and look at the site. And as you're doing that, I know, Whitley, I'm probably going on a little bit long here because I'm trying to think of the right way to couch the words.
No, we're fascinated, believe me.
The absolute only way we're going to avoid say, the first great time war between all these countries that are developing time travel. Whitley, you said it earlier, and I hate to put the label on it, but countries will attempt to destroy each other, and even in some cases before they even exist, by re-engineering historical timelines. These technologies are being applied. The consequences, everybody, are severe. We're not talking about just modifying one or two events. We're talking about modifying aspects of reality, even individuals' own existence, through inappropriate application of this type of technology. So the only way we're going to solve that problem, maybe we can talk a little bit about that with me later, is through transparency and bringing this information out in the open. So what I encourage everybody is get online, look at this information, help pass the word, and help us make a demand to government officials around the world to start making public the type of work that they're funding and developing today.
There's something very interesting about what he said, folks, and as my listeners know, most of my questions are setups of different kinds, and here was the setup. I was waiting for you to tell us to buy something. You never did. And I find that very interesting, because that's obviously not what your work is about. It's not about buying things. There's something very real going on with David Anderson, I think. The Anderson Institute, don't miss it, AndersonInstitute.com. He's calling for help here. He's saying that this is real. And good Lord, look at what he's telling us. This is a power that seems to me almost greater than the power of God. And staring us right in the face.
And Whitley, would it be possible, could I offer just a few words on this to your listeners who might come visit the site?
Why don't we do that in just a moment, because we have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. Expert hosts, unique information.
We're talking to David Lewis Anderson, the Anderson Institute, AndersonInstitute.com. Time travel. Is it real? Can it be done? David had some words he wanted to say to us right before the break. David, why don't you do that right now?
Thank you, Whitley. As you opened the question a little bit earlier in the previous segment, you asked me what would I like people to do who came to visit the site. And I wanted to try to find a way to succinctly say it, because it's a very deeply personal and passionate message I'd like to get across. Many of us have, not everybody, but many of us have followed the great developments in space-time physics and time-control technology. For those of us inside the circle, we're aware of the people who are becoming aware of a really great disquiet that's gathering around the topic. This has been raised in almost every aspect of the research going on around the world, and we see this occurring now with an exponential increase in the outcries we're hearing over the risk of re-engineering past timelines and the impact this could have on the planet and the human race. This isn't theory anymore. It's possible to send information forward and backwards in time to create new historical timelines and many other applications. The benefits are to all of us, to some of us might be obvious and wonderful that this is no longer science fiction we want to celebrate. But by doing these things, we can actually risk changing the very makeup of our reality. And do we as a human race on this planet really know what the long-term impact on individuals, the human race, and this entire planet will be? When you look at this, I want you to try to think about what are the benefits, but more importantly, how does one judge what is really useful? There's a very complex web of interdependencies that characterize any reality. And when we start re-engineering timelines, honestly, to other than those of us who are totally enthralled with the technology for the sake of the technology itself, the ability to characterize that complex web of interdependencies and the impact it could have seem well beyond our capacity to predict the impact. How is this going to affect human evolution? If we manipulate history, we might be forcing an unnaturally and quick rate of change. It's not saying, and please for my peers out there, I don't want to get a lot of hate mail from scientists all around the world, it's not saying we should stop our developments in this area. It's simply to point out that we, and we need your help as listeners, must insist and become aware of the awesome implications of the new area of science. The most urgent questions that arise have more to do with ethics than the actual technology in the laboratory of generating closed time-like curves and all the science that goes into making these applications possible. The challenge is really now with correctly applying our knowledge and using this power in relation to the new possibilities, and as we open up these new applications. These are the issues. It's simply no longer beyond the bounds of possibilities to do this. So how do we handle the new knowledge? It's really a question of what to do with it. We have the ability to look in the future. What do we do with this knowledge, and how do we handle it? Who should have access to this knowledge, given its social and personal implications in relation to anything and anyone? As you read through this information, I ask you to understand and challenge yourself to think about that. And if you do believe and are concerned about just some of these few questions raised by time control technology researchers and applications, I would challenge you to read more, learn more, network more, and study what's going on around the world and demand more from special interest groups, industry, governments, to come forward with the work that they have been funding. In the end,
what special interest group in particular are you referring to? Is there any one that you could tell us about, or two?
Any one or two special interest groups.
Yeah, could you identify any of the groups we might want to contact?
Yeah, well, first off, governments, because governments do fund quite a bit of work. There are a lot of private companies as well that keep pretty private on this front. And I don't want to play into the conspiracy theory arena too much, but we're talking about an advanced technology that could reshape power generation methods being used today. And a lot of that naturally becomes suppressed by the special interest groups. These groups, Whitley, might usually be related to the oil industry, to whom the current generation technology is profitable. We have to be careful here when we talk about free energy, too, and I just dropped the word free energy into the show here. The context of the term free energy is not well defined. We talk about things like thermodynamic energy, solar energy. Generally, when we use the term free energy, it's reported to be about things like zero-point energy grids and perpetual motion and things like that. Remember, we're not talking about this. We're talking about harnessing a natural occurring capability, an energy source within our reach of technology today and using it for time control and time travel. But I think the greatest special interest groups that this comes from, Whitley, would be those that are achieving profit through current energy generation. And I just realized I skipped a note. One of the interesting fallouts of time control technology for us isn't just time control technology. It's using effects within curved space-time for new ways of generating energy. Okay, and this is a little bit unique to what the Anderson Institute is doing. And we have two problems at our end, Whitley, which makes our situation doubly complex. We're not just talking about the time control technology, which governments do want to keep secret. I mean, that's been just like with any technology that might provide them a way of continuing their survivability through the ages. Governments have a natural tendency to want to keep technology which could be used as a competitive advantage or an advantage in sustaining their economy and existence private, but also it gets complex because of the energy generation side. With the ability to generate large amount of energy through some of these different technologies that enable time control as well. And when we get to there, then we start talking about the oil industry and other energy generation industries surrounding the fossil fuel area.
Well, of course we do, and we end up in a situation where you could have, for example, there's a little company in Dublin called Steorn, which has apparently developed a free energy device, and it's quite conceivable that someone like the chairman of Exxon might really not want that to happen. Could he send somebody back in time to make sure that Steorn disappears not only from the face of the earth, but also from our memory entirely. So we don't even know it's gone. That's a power that's absolutely terrifying that anyone would have ever. Good for good or evil, frankly.
Absolutely. The application of this technology for good, we talk about the opportunity to travel to the future and bring back information of new cures for diseases that are plaguing this planet or perhaps giving us information to avoid things, but there are equally very, very dangerous possibilities from applying the technology, and this is where we need everybody's help. In the end, the solution would be in the problem, again, that what we really face is what choices do we make in the face of growing options that time control, science, and technology are providing us. Again, this could very well affect our concept, your concept, my concept, Whitley, your concept, as well as your listeners, of what it means to be human. So it's conceivable that the human race, if the human race uses this newly found knowledge and skill skillfully, it could foster, a greater unity with each other and life as a whole, being part of the same dynamic web of information and energy. You started touching on parallel universes before. I'd like to skip right by that and say really what we are living in is a dynamic web of information and energy. But many people are, including myself, are becoming very increasingly worried about the short and long-term consequences of applying time control technology. The gulf right now between the scientific community and the general public, frankly, I believe is caused in part by the lack of transparency of the governments and the organizations who develop this technology. And if we want to avert that great time war, we need to demand transparency of the technology. And that onus to all my colleagues out there who might be listening to the show needs to be on the scientific community to demonstrate that there aren't any negative consequences in the application of this technology, or that it can be controlled, and most importantly, to adopt complete transparency on all the possible limitless implications that this technology could have for any one of us as an individual, the human race, and some people even go as far to say, Whitley, even in this very reality.
We'll be right back, and when we do come back, we're going to be asking David some questions about how much time travel has already taken place. We'll be right back. We're talking to David Anderson, his website, AndersonInstitute.com. That's AndersonInstitute.com. David, before we left the air, I was going to ask you about whether or not you know of people who have definitely traveled through time. But I want to preface that with another question, if I may. That is that there exist stories, quite a few stories, of people who have had spontaneous experiences of movement through time. I've had such an experience myself, an incredibly vivid one that my listeners have heard, so I won't repeat it except to say that I went back standing on a street corner waiting to cross the street in Manhattan. In March of 1983, I went back into what appeared to be the perhaps 1870s or 1880s for a few minutes. It was an absolutely shocking, vividly real experience. And I know time travel is possible, but how? So how do you react to those stories? Is it spontaneous sometimes?
I think absolutely yes, it can be. Again, I'll answer this from the standpoint of a person with a degree in physics, a degree in philosophy, who likes to think beyond those borders. So I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I will tell you this. One thing I do believe, and one thing I think most physicists and scientists believe today, is that we're living in a dynamic web of information and energy. And this goes back to my earlier point that if you want to understand what's happening with time and what time is all about, you have to study it from many different angles. If we are truly living in a world of information and energy, technology is not the only way to control time. In many examples, it's common, and I like to use it. Our human mind is like a television set. There's this dynamic web of electromagnetic information energy floating around the air around us right now. And just like our brains are like a television set with a little tuner on it. And as we turn the channel, we can tune into certain parts of what's in that electromagnetic web of information and energy. And taking out the television analogy, unfortunately, the human mind is very limited. Our tuner only gets maybe one or two channels. There are many religions and beliefs that spend lifetimes training their mind to have that ability to remote view, to time travel using the power of the human mind. So when people say, well, hey, it can't be possible, say using the power of meditation to travel through time, my response is, why not? The world is a dynamic web of information and energy. We know the brain is very powerful. We use a small portion of it with the right training. I personally believe that the power of the human mind and harnessing that could enable remote viewing and time travel just as easily as technology can. And frankly, I personally feel you can't necessarily separate the two, and you have to look at them both as being complementary, not excluding each other.
There's an experiment called the Geo 600 experiment unfolding now in England. Are you familiar with this?
I can't say I am, no.
Okay.
Whitley.
It looks now as if the Geo 600 device is being buffeted by the quantum convulsions of space-time. If that's true, then the result of the experiment is that we are actually living on a two-dimensional surface in a kind of hologram. Does that ring a bell at all with you?
Absolutely, and it goes back to the statement: we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world in reality the way we are, and there is that analogy, and I got to tell you, I'll drop in two of my favorite books and this all ties back, so I'll make a little loop with it, and I promise I'll come back in less than 60 seconds. But one of my favorite books on time travel, one in physics is Space-Time Physics by Taylor and John Archibald Wheeler, but the other one is Edwin Abbott's Flatlands, written back in the 1880s, and he talks about these mythical two-dimensional creatures living in a two-dimensional world like dots on a piece of paper, sliding around, bumping into walls, until one day a three-dimensional object passes through the paper. To them, it's magical. They see this dot appear, it grows bigger, and then it disappears, and eventually completely disappears as it passes through the paper. To them, they never could see this before. In their two-dimensional world, this was impossible. It was magic. It was almost godlike. And we can extend that same argument to us living in a three-dimensional world. When we try to look and visualize 4 or 5 dimensions, it's completely impossible. And I like any reference to analogies that talk to us as a two-dimensional world, because even if you read that book and then go back and read John Archibald Wheeler's and Edwin Taylor's book Space-Time Physics, they draw an analogy that actually can help you overcome that barrier of the limit of the human mind and actually visualize what space-time looks like.
How interesting, because I wonder if the visualization itself might kind of free you in time in a certain way.
Absolutely. Oh, Whitley, thank you so much for saying that. Absolutely. And I think as a people, one of the reasons we don't understand time and don't want to understand time, or just refuse to as a human race, is that we only like to things that we can touch and feel and visualize. Those are the things we believe. And what I like about, and I'm not plugging their book, both these scientists, including one just recently passed away last year. It was a great loss for the physics community. But the book Space-Time Physics, if you read it and maybe reread it and understand it, it basically boils the relationship between space and time down to an algebraic equation. And if you can visualize, if you can embed yourself into that book and the thought process of those authors, you can actually visualize. And I don't know too many people who can do this, and I teach classes around the world on the subject, and every now and then I'll walk out of a class with one or two students who get it. And when they see it, all of a sudden, this complex world of what is space and time and how does it relate, it boils down to high school algebra. And all of a sudden, once it boils down to high school algebra, they can see it. And once they see it, they can see the limitless possibilities that are within our reach today to apply this. So I just got a little too excited, Whitley, so I think I'll calm down and be quiet now.
Well, let me ask you this. We touched on technologies a little bit. And there could be, in other words, a technology that could induce movement through time in a human body. The body could move through time. Or are there technologies that can enable visual, like you referred at the beginning of the show, to the possibility of making images of the distant past?
I think the answer is both are very feasible. It's possible to send both information and matter forward and back in time, and it depends. I think it comes back to that moral compass. As a human race, we need to establish a moral compass that crosses all lines of governments, religion, and every other demographic you could think of, and need to apply it in that manner.
I see. But can you describe any of these technologies in any way at all? I mean, are they electromagnetic, or how do they? What kind of energies are involved in the application of the technologies?
Well, different technologies that are being experimented with. As a matter of fact, I would say for those of you interested in a free presentation, we actually have a overview of the top 10 time control technologies and methods that are accepted or in use today around the world. It's a free download, a 27-slide presentation with about another 80 pages of information on each subject. That includes technologies like quantum tunneling, near and faster than light speed travel, Jacobi warp drive, time warp fields, circulating light beams, wormholes, cosmic streams, strings, Tipler cylinders, and the Casimir effect. The energy levels, Whitley, they actually vary and that's a very important point. A couple of these technologies, like near light speed travel and faster than light travel, require very high level of energies that are well outside of the reach of our planet today, as well as we'd say within the next 2 or 3 generations. But technologies like quantum tunneling, different technologies that use closed time-like curves like the Tipler cylinder, the Casimir effect, or time warp fields, and possibly circulating light beams, all are within the power levels required today.
So it is possible then today. I was afraid of that because I'm afraid that we do not have the wisdom today to do with this. It's almost a sacred skill, and yet, like so many things that we have ended up in our hands, it's far beyond us ethically. We're not even close because our philosophical approach to this has been so limited, as you said earlier. And yet here we have another extraordinary technology being dropped into our laps. I just think to myself, what if the North Koreans got it? Oh, Lord.
This is critical, Whitley.
Yeah.
Your point is very well taken. The pace of this development of time control science has put us in a place where it's so urgent now to refine our capacity for moral reasoning so we can really address the moral challenges. And we can't wait. We can't wait for this type of wisdom to emerge in an organic way, which is why I'm so excited to be talking on your show and to be sharing information with people, because we have a responsibility to confront the reality of our potential future and past and tackle these problems directly now. We have to do something we've never done before, Whitley, which your point just lit me on fire again, is that we need to examine this question from a perspective we've never done before, from a global ethics perspective that is grounded in the recognition of fundamental human values that transcend religion and science. It's not going to be enough to adopt the position that our responsibility of a society is simply to further this knowledge and enhance our power. And nor with this type of technology, it's not safe to use the argument that what we do with this knowledge and power should be left to individuals. We have to be very critically self-aware. We have to cross government lines of religion, and we need a collective effort to avoid the problems you're saying, Whitley, a collective effort that's never been achieved before on this planet. But it needs to come. If it doesn't come, we're going to see alterations of our timeline. And what is maybe a little bit sad is that some people who are in tune with it, like you were talking about before, many people will be oblivious to some of the changes that happen. But some people who have trained themselves or have the natural ability to be able to feel, say, be the human TTDs that we always talk about in our lab, TTD being a temporal tremor detector. It's something that we use in the lab and when we're trying to evaluate what's happening in other parts of the world. There's some human beings that act just like that. They have the natural skill or ability or have developed it through training of their own mind to sense these things. And some changes, people talk about parallel universes. I'm not saying I don't believe in hyperspace, but based on the observations we see in the labs, we don't see the use of parallel universes as an explanation to avoid paradoxes. In our minds, 2 points. Paradoxes are simply places where rational minds bump into their own limitations, but more importantly, paradoxes don't exist. When we travel back in time, what we're seeing is not the spinning off of a parallel universe. What we're seeing is a modification of the existing reality, and that can affect people, places, and things, and can have a tremendous ripple effect depending on what's being touched.
David Anderson, his website, AndersonInstitute.com. If you think about what you just heard, this is a completely new direction. We have basically no idea how far this has actually gone. He offers an abundance of ways of engaging this question on AndersonInstitute.com, including an extraordinary free download that will take you through all kinds of different methodologies of time travel, some of which are probably in use or coming into use right now. We Institute. David Anderson knows at least as much about time and time travel as anyone else around. Welcome to the show, David.
Whitley, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here on Unknown Country.
Well, thank you. David, let's talk a little bit first about whether or not time travel is even possible. Could you tell us, well, for example, I've read for years that physicists were saying it's not, and yet that seems to have changed.
Well, my short answer to that, Whitley, is absolutely yes. As a matter of fact, I think it's an old question. It's not just about what I might speak about today with regards to our research and work at the Anderson Institute. I've personally witnessed the activities at different levels of time-controlled technology and application in Japan, but there is the ability, well within the laws of our mathematics and physics, to be able to provide time-control capabilities to the future and the past, whether it's to transmit matter forward or backwards in time, whether it's just information. Some techniques and some aspects of the laws within our mathematics and physics today are very feasible within the state of technology today. There are some that hold tremendous promise to greatly increase the capabilities and the range of applications in time-control technology, but need a little more time to develop the supporting technologies required to make it happen. One of the greatest developments, Whitley, for yourself and your listeners in the recent years, really physicists in our our community pretty much have always agreed that time travel is possible. Pretty much a lot of them didn't want to come out of the time travel closet, if you will. But pretty much almost every major physicist is coming out now talking about, as a matter of fact, that time travel absolutely is possible. It does not violate the laws of our mathematics and physics. You have physicists even as well known as Stephen Hawking, who now acknowledged and came out publicly stating that he believes in parallel universes and time travel. The real revelation that has happened is that we're finding new ways to accomplish this at a very relatively low input power, something that was quite difficult in previous years.
Yeah, because Stephen Hawking's comment was always that it was apparently was possible. He changed his position in 1993, I believe, but that it probably wasn't practical. And this is what's so interesting, because you're saying basically that it is practical. It can be done.
Absolutely. We've seen government organizations like the NEC with funding through Princeton, and Dr. Yulian Wang's work sending information in India, in China, in South Korea, and at 2 different locations in the Americas. So I can say for a fact that absolutely yes, time control technology is here. It exists on different levels and scales, but it is here today. So it's not a question of if it is possible. It certainly is. The question is of how and when will be applied and for what type of uses.
Well, of course, what you've said is incredibly revolutionary. Time control technology. Let's talk a little bit about what that would be, or is. If you would describe it for us.
Certainly. Well, certainly, time control technologies, different technologies exist today that have been demonstrated in the lab and passed peer review, and some of the technologies have been demonstrated yet have been kept quite covert due to the influences of major special interest groups and governments.
This edition of Dreamland suffers from deteriorated sound quality. We're very sorry for this inconvenience. Unfortunately, we were unable to correct it. What if it was possible to go back in time and see the past as it really was, to walk in the streets of yesterday, to perhaps meet your own grandfather? What if it was possible to go into the future and to find out what really matters now, then come back and change your life accordingly? The magic of seeing the stock market reports of 2 years hence, you'd be rich. Are there such people? Could it be real? Well, of course, we think not. But let's talk today to David Lewis Anderson of the Anderson